Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the Coach. Our friend Nana Ya Berko writes in this question about some old crappy fights of mine that he watched on Jerry Liu's Fight Commentary Breakdown channel. He said in all of them, two of them, that's a lot, right? 2 out of 17 professional MMA fights. Anyway, he says, in all of them, you looked uncoordinated and hazy and awkward and robotic and all this other stuff. And he wants to know if this is indicative of my performance and my ability at the time, or if there's something he's missing, if that was not an accurate representation of my skills at the time. He goes on to say, I love your videos and hope nothing I've said can be construed as offensive. It isn't meant to be. No offense taken, man. That's a sincere question. So he's watched my sparring videos, and he watched those old fights from, when was that, 11, 12 years ago, quite some time ago, and he's noticed a massive difference in skill and ability. It's like, well, why did you look so bad then, and you look so different now? What's going on there? Okay, are you the same person you were 12 years ago? What's that? No, you're not? Well, guess what? Neither am I. What happens when you train every single day, consistently, for 12 years, especially when you do that multiple times a day? Well, guess what? You get better. But it's not just a case of that. Those specific fights that you're talking about, here's the story behind those. Those all happened within the same 2-week period. I had 3 fights in 2 weeks. The first one of those fights Jerry showcases is from Martial Combat. That was the predecessor of 1FC before they rebranded. Against third-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt world champion Leandro Issa. Jerry forgot to mention that part. And I was 30 pounds dehydrated. If you are 30 pounds dehydrated, you're going to look awkward, uncoordinated, robotic, dizzy, bad. If you cut from 176 pounds, which was my walking around weight back then, to 145 pounds to the featherweight weight class, that's more than 30 pounds. Anyway, in less than 24 hours, you sweat that off in the form of water weight. You lose almost all the electrolytes in your body. You lose control of your gross motor functions and your fine motor functions. So what was happening? The room was spinning. I was severely dehydrated. I was dying. People have died from weight cuts less than that. In fact, not much longer after that, when Martial Combat rebranded as 1FC, a fighter actually did die from a weight cut. That is the reason why Martial Combat, or I should say 1FC, implemented those policies to try to discourage fighters from cutting extreme amounts of weight, because it actually killed a guy. And it almost killed me, so I was essentially a dead man walking in that fight. That's why it looks incredibly bad. So, Leandro Issa finishes this fight with a Kimura, and he dislocates my left shoulder. I have a fight 3 days later in Xi'an. I fly to Xi'an. I have not put the weight back on yet. I've had, I think it was 2 meals in that time frame, one in a hotel and one on an airplane. So I'm still not back yet. And I have another fight in Xi'an against a member of the China top team, a fellow named Amu Gulong. I think that's a Mongolian name. A lot of Mongolian fighters at the Xi'an Sports University. Anyway, he's a big, tall guy. He weighs more than me. I had just come off of a featherweight match, 145 pounds. This match was at 185 pounds, a middleweight matchup. So I'm fighting with a dislocated shoulder. I'm fighting a guy above my weight class. I'm still working off a case of severe dehydration. Here's what happens. We go out there. We kickbox a little bit. He gets a takedown because he's a solid Sanda fighter. And I start playing from my open guard. He starts throwing soccer kicks at my head, which surprises me because they had told me that this fight was to be held under UFC rules. There was a little misunderstanding about what UFC rules meant. They thought that meant anything goes. So he's throwing soccer kicks at the head of a downed opponent. If you're not aware, that is a foul in mixed martial arts under UFC or unified rules. But the referee let it slide, so I got back up to my feet. Screw that. I'm not going to get soccer kicked in the head. Not for what they're paying me anyway. So we scramble around a little bit. We both end up on the ground. At some point, I'm on the bottom in my guard. He's punching me for a while. I get sick of being punched. I realize, hey, this guy doesn't know jiu-jitsu. And I do. I sweep him. I get on top. I'm in mount. I start dropping elbows on his head for the remaining 2 minutes of the round. I look up at the referee. The referee will not stop the fight. He is cut over one eye. I'm thinking, they have to stop the fight now because they don't like to see blood in China on TV. They'll stop it. They don't. The round ends. They drag Amu back to his corner. By the arms, he is not able to stand up under his own power. He's effectively knocked out with a cut over the eye. But they revive him. He comes back for round 2. He throws a straight right. It catches me over the eye. A grazing blow, but enough to open up a cut, because I've been punched a number of times in my guard in the previous round. So there's a little cut. I see a drop of blood fall from my eye as if in slow motion. At the same time, I see the ring doctor throwing in a white towel, waving his arm, saying, "Stop the fight, he's caught." And in spite of the fact that my opponent had been knocked out and cut in the previous round, because I was cut, standing up, and the ring doctor, totally not biased at all, decided to stop the fight. So that was that, and there were a lot of other screwy decisions on that fight card, but I'm not going to get into those right now in the interest of time. So the following week, I fly to Inner Mongolia for a kickboxing match. And this fight, part of this fight, you can see part of this fight on Jerry Lou's channel. He doesn't show the whole thing because he lacks the patience for a 5-round fight. I didn't realize it was a 5-round fight. I was told it would be a 3-round fight. When I got there, I was confused why they had bumped it up to 5 rounds, and the reason was made clear after the fight. It turned out to be a championship title fight. Another thing Jerry gets wrong in his channel, that this fight against Zheng Jipeng was his first fight. That is not true. It was his first professional fight. Zheng Jipeng was the 2009 Chinese Army Sanda champion. And that fight ended in a split decision. Meaning, I almost beat the guy on points. Almost. Anyway. But that fight in Singapore, risking death, cutting down to 145 pounds, dropping 30 pounds of water weight, springing back up in Inner Mongolia for a middleweight fight at 185, and then dropping back down to 145. If you look at my Sherdog record, which is highly inaccurate, by the way, it's missing about 10 of my professional fights. Only one of my fights in China was recorded on Sherdog. They did not report or record most fights from China back then. Anyway, if you look at that, it says that I weigh something like 145 pounds because of that fight in Singapore. That was the only professional mixed martial arts match that I ever did at 185. I fought at 4 different weight classes: as a middleweight, as a featherweight, as a welterweight, and as a lightweight. And only one match as a featherweight. I did one match, also kickboxing match, as a featherweight, which was this fight against Zheng Jipeng in Inner Mongolia. Zheng Jipeng, if you're not familiar with who that is, after that fight he went on to fight guys such as Hua Kao, and he also fought Hongman Choi in this crazy fight, because he's kind of a little dude, Zheng Jipeng, and Hongman Choi is a Korean giant. He's a guy who also fought Fedor Emelianenko, Elong, and some other famous, notable guys in these freak show exhibitions. Anyway, so I had those 3 fights in 2 weeks. 2 of those fights I did with a dislocated shoulder from the first fight. 2 of those fights I did severely dehydrated. So if you're wondering why those fights didn't look great, and why I look better in sparring now, while fresh and not dehydrated and not severely injured, and with 12 more years of consistent training experience, well, there's your answer. So I hope that answers your question, my friend. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.